Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President
Low-rated.
Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly
Which one is it?
deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
President first.
All right, so I'm so happy that this meeting took place. In this video, we got the president of El Salvador, Bukele, and he's meeting with President Trump, obviously, to discuss tariffs. But you know, the liberal lamestream media could not wait to try to pull a gotcha and bring up the whole issue with this individual who's deported to El Salvador, who they're trying to portray as this, just loving father. And it's just innocent person who was mistakenly deported. Well, in this video, if you didn't know this already, not only is President Trump going to break it down, not only is the president of El Salvador going to break it down, but you're going to have Pam Bondi, Stephen Miller, and Marco Rubio all weigh in. And after the response and the shutdown that they get today, this question should never, ever be brought up again. But I'm also going to show you a clip of just how nefarious the lamestream media is with how they tried to even spin it after this meeting. So just hang out with me, check out these video clips. I'm gonna share a little bit of commentary, but let's get into it.
And foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Can you just also respond to that question? Because, you know, it's asked by CNN and they always ask it with a slant because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also?
Yes, gladly.
Now, have you heard as Pam Bondi just put it to her, saying that, hey, listen, you know, this is up to the president of El Salvador. And if he wants to do it, we'll facilitate it. Because you know how the media has been playing it like the Trump administration made a mistake. There was no mistake made. And in this answer from Stephen Miller, you're going to hear the flat out truth that the lamestream media, which is almost all of the media outlets, with the exception of Fox News, News Nation, have been trying to slant. And why would they be trying to slant this story and make it like he's this innocent man? Is to play on the heartstrings of the American public to try to get the people to rise up and shut the deportations down. They thought they were going to be able to do it already by now. But luckily, the American people are standing behind the president. But check out Stephen Miller.
So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful.
Look at Trump's face.
Main components reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the president could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world. And I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan to ask for any...
Ooh-wee. Now we know 9-0, the Supreme Court ruled that the lower court judges do not have the right to tell the president who and what he should be doing as far as deportations. Then two immigration judges found out that he was a member of MS-13. And you want to know something else? there's a picture out where in El Salvador, when they shaved his head, guess what's tattooed on the back of the man's head? And see, the liberal media has been playing these games. And if you're like a lot of people out there, a lot of people are busy with their families, with their lives, and they jump online to get some information and they just want it straight. And when they're being fed that, oh, this is the father of the year, when in reality, yeah, he may be married today. Gangsters and thugs get married to have children. But the liberal media are so racist and ignorant, they think that if you're married to have children, there's no way you could be a gang member. Pablo Escobar was married and had children that he loved very much. But the fact of the matter is the liberal media acts as if President Trump or Secretary of State Rubio can go into a foreign country, pluck out somebody and bring them back. That is insane. 9-0 Supreme Court, which you got liberal judges and conservative judges that agreed. A lower court judge cannot supersede the president. Then he was labeled a domestic terrorist labeled a terrorist. And by that regard alone has no right, no due process, no jurisdiction in America. Bottom line, ain't that great news? Now check out Secretary of State Rubio and then the President Bukele gonna get into it.
Or it's asking to.
And
Is that-
what was the ruling in the Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, so it's a 9-0
In our favor.
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
If you enjoyed this video, do me a solid and hit that like button, because I'll never ask you for a cash app or a super chat, but you hitting that like button, it really does help the channel. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe. Once you do, make sure you hit that notification bell and then select all. And that way you'll be notified whenever I upload new videos.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it per the court can only be directed to him.
I asked
¿Usted lo
President
liberaría,
Bukele,
Presidente
what is your-
Bukele?
can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States.
It's always
How can I smuggle, how can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not gonna do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
You can release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country in the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? And that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal,
Yeah,
released into
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people. Mark,
Now, did you hear the president of El Salvador even looked at liberal CNN and said, what do you want me to do? So you want me to to smuggle a terrorist into America? And then you heard one of those other smug reporters say, well, you could release him in El Salvador. And he's like, I just worked to clean up, to take one of the most dangerous countries and turn it into one of the safest countries. And you want me to let these murderers and thieves back out on the street in my country so your liberal outlet can feel good. So your billionaire liberal want to do good, but really destructive donors or people can feel good about themselves that they helped this little Hispanic man. No, helping him means you hurt a lot of other people. But let's listen to Rubio real quick.
do you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President, no, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, the president,
Woo. So, oh, let me see what you.
Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And they said
How long do we have
that
to answer
it must
this
be
question?
facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility. Please go ahead.
And I mean, Caitlin Collins at this point, I don't even know why she speaks at these things, because she just gets blasted and blasted and blasted. Now, she's just one member of the lamestream media representing the communist news network known as CNN. But let's check out how CBS puts their spin on it also, which is insane that these places are even doing that. But hey, they won't learn. Check this out.
How can I return him? He says. So let's bring in CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes. Nancy, based on what we heard, it doesn't sound like high confidence Kilmar Abrego Garcia will be coming back to the United States.
Right. You heard not only from Stephen Miller there in the White House, but also the president and the Secretary of State and the Attorney General. And they all were singing from the same hymnal, basically saying that they don't believe that they are required to bring him back to the United States, even though he may have been sent in error. And if he were to be returned to the United States by the president of El Salvador, who was sitting right there, they said they would simply turn around and send him right back. They said he will not live here in the United States with his wife and child, both American citizens, again. And for the president of El Salvador's part, he was equally forceful. He said that he is not in the habit of releasing terrorists from the infamous prison where Abrego Garcia is being held right now. And he said there's no point in him sending him to the U.S. if he is as dangerous as the White House says. Keep in mind.
You see how they keep saying, as the White House says? No, it wasn't the White House. It was also two judges prior to it getting to the White House who also said this man is a member of MS-13. Why is it that our left-wing media and our Democrat politicians fight so hard for criminals? Cashless bail. It's almost like they want the powder keg to explode. They want these criminals out until it hits their doorstep, until it's one of their family members whose lives get taken. They think by living in the suburbs and in their gated communities, this stuff won't touch their doorstep. But I assure you, if they had it their way and we would have kept the invasion going, it was only going to be a matter of time before one of these high-level politicians' life was taken. And that would be a shame. And unfortunately, that's what happens with the Democrat Party. In order for them to realize how horrible their ideas are, many times you have to give them what they want. The only downside about that is, in order to give them what they want, it affects all of us. And we did that for 4 years with Joe Biden. We got a chance to see what open borders will be like, printing money like it's going out of style, going climate crazy with the Green New Scam. What happens if we start defunding the police and making the police precinct shrink? We saw what happened with that. All horrible things that did not work and put the United States on the brink of disaster. And so, like President Trump said, rather than congratulating the fact that our streets are safer, that where he's keeping his campaign promises, that Americans 90-10 are supporting this movement, the Communist News Network and the left-wing CBS and NBC and ABC, you know, the alphabet agencies, talk mouthpieces, in which we know that's what they are, and that's a whole nother video. The alphabet, they, you know, in cahoots with the CIA, allegedly putting out these stories, but they try to spin it. And I'm so happy that people like you are smart, or too smart to see through it.
Find that administration officials have not provided any proof that he is dangerous or that he's a human trafficker, as they allege. They say that they have information that they have not shown to the public that indicates that this man, who is a construction worker, a union member, is actually quite dangerous and a member of MS-13.
Nancy, this is also the president's first meeting of many with world leaders.
All right, that's it for that. You know, I just wanted to bring that to you. President Bukele shut them down, as he should. And I'm so happy that President Trump and his team is not allowing these left-wing extremists, to activist judges and these treasonous politicians to stop the America First movement. So wanted to bring this to you. And if you stayed and you watched it this far, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And like always, if you haven't already, hit that like button, share the video, leave a comment, tell me what you think about it, and subscribe if you haven't. Other than that, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you so much for watching. And I want you to stay safe, be great. I'm Brian Maxwell. I look forward to seeing you at the top. Over and out, y'all.